County connecting milepost 10, Highway 228. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, there's somebody playing chicken right behind me, and I don't know, but I just saw in my rear view mirror he might have just hit somebody.
So someone might have crashed? Did they hit head on?
It looks like it. I don't know. I didn't turn around, but I saw the lights, and then I didn't see the lights.
It looks like the three people in the victim vehicle were all siblings.
I've got all three names. The driver of the white car, Caleb Frank Simonis, 6'9" of 2000. Next one is Shelby, Shelby Rose, 8/24/03. Kylie, Kyllee, Ann, 3/17/05.
Apparently the mother has just arrived on scene. Can we get some help from county and probably see if we get a chaplain out here as quick as we can?
Lynn County is advising that the driver is intoxicated and is trying to leave the scene. There's at least 4 people involved and ODOT's en route.
Caleb was the strong, silent type. He was, kind of like me. We don't talk a lot, but he was quiet, but he was a hard worker. He always liked tinkering on cars and that type of thing.
Well, Caleb was in school at Lynn Benton to be an auto mechanic, and his intention was to stay for another 2 years and become a diesel and heavy machinery mechanic as well. His long-term goal is he wanted to own his own service truck, and so he wanted to just be able to do whatever he wanted, work on anything that somebody called for.
He was just a great kid. He would never do anybody wrong. He was always there to help.
He was a big brother. That was his full-time job to him. The girls would, do the typical step on a nail or sprain their ankle, and Caleb would carry them. Even when they were bigger, he'd be crying, and you'd spend as much time trying to tell him that it's just, it's not a big deal, as you would try to comfort, take care of whatever the issue with the girls were. He just did not tolerate his little sisters getting hurt.
Shelby was very intelligent. She was a great big sister to Kylie. She wanted to be a veterinarian, and she would come out on farm calls with me and help me with the large animal calls. I had kind of dreamed of someday that this place would be hers.
She'd bought a cow from a guy, an older cow, and they were like, this one's not going to be your pet. It's not going to happen that way. And so she brought it down here to the barn. We put it in a 12x12 stall, and patience was really her thing. And she just sat in a lawn chair outside the stall, and she sat there for hours, probably 5-6 hours. She just always was that way, She would stay up all night long with sick animals. She was a sweet girl. She would be at college right now, just have started, and the young man that killed her will do less time in jail for killing her than she would have been in college for. And that's pretty rough to swallow.
When you tell people about the crash, how do you describe it?
I try to be as blunt as I can and tell people that my children were crushed and severed. They weren't just killed, they were destroyed physically and in every other way.
I was one of the first ones there because that night, it was around, a little before midnight, Shelby texted me. Their dogs had gotten in a fight, and one of their dogs, the eyelid, was torn really bad. It needed to be sutured up. So I said, let's load up. And so we all headed, or they were ahead of me. They headed to the clinic, and I was behind them coming from my house. And then I came up on the scene, and I knew right away it wasn't good.
Shelby, she, when she came to, she was saying, owie, 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 and somebody help me. As her dad was always there, I know who somebody was. And I wasn't there. When Kylie woke up and she was sitting directly behind her, as she reached over the back of Shelby's seat and started running her fingers through Shelby's hair. Kylie said she could tell, they know, people know, and maybe farm kids know better than a lot. And so she just started telling Shelby that she loved her. And I suspect at that point Shelby probably realized as well. And so they just started telling each other how much they loved each other.
When you slow down your vehicle, your nose goes down, and when you have another lifted F-350, it just drove, a monster trucked it, and it pulled that dash just down upon them. And it was probably one of the worst extrications I've ever done. We ended up pulling the whole roof off, pulling every door off.
They had her, of course, in pressure suits. When people are crushed severely, they can live for a great deal of time like that, actually. It's when that is released that problems. They met Life Flight at the park in Brownsville, and she passed before they even reached altitude.
I don't have the words. Would you like us? We usually have a chaplain come out to help us with this part of it. But are we saying they are going to put a monitor on him, on your son, to make sure, but
there's a chance that he's passed, that he's dead.
My son's last words were, "Oh shit." That was the last thing he ever said on the planet. As he hit the brakes and turned to the right as hard as he could to get out of the road. And we know that because of the recorder, of course, of the car. I don't know, I really don't. I don't know how I got there, but I was there. And I had Caleb, I was holding him. I remember looking down, and I'm looking at pavement, wet pavement. And I just couldn't put it together in my mind. It wasn't until like 5 or 6 days later I was coming home from the hospital in Springfield, and just as I got off at the freeway, it hit me, and I pulled over, and I realized that I was looking at the pavement because Caleb wasn't there.
This was by far the worst crash that I've been on scene. The worst part about this crash was it was completely avoidable. There was no reason for this to have had to take place.
Austin goes to prison for 12, 13 years. We have a life sentence. Our family does. We'll never be able to get Shelby or Caleb back again. And that's hard. It's just not fair.
You don't ever walk away from a terrible accident or a traumatic event and just never think about it. You don't just go home and not like, oh yeah, hey, that happened, that was terrible. It was a lot easier for me when I was younger to kind of shrug stuff off, and you kind of just put it in a box and forget about it. But once you have your own kids and you've got your own family, it just wears on you. You carry it with you.
Kylie, we went through a period of time for months. I'd have to get up every 2 hours and just go into her room and check on her. And if I didn't, she would want to know why. She needed me to do that. She needed to know that I was still there. She doesn't really remember Caleb much, from that night, which I'm thankful for. She does, however, remember a lot of details of Shelby, which I wish she didn't. I can't imagine what her life is going to be like with that there.
I think there's probably about 2 weeks, if not more, I did not sleep at night, just kind of replaying it in my head. And once I put my head on the pillow, just kind of, my brain would just go there and just kind of dissect it. And I mean, it was almost a career killer for me. I mean, I almost quit. I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I'm tired of seeing people hurt. I'm tired of seeing pain in this world. I'm tired of seeing suffering.
What we need to remember and understand is an accident is something that's completely unforeseen. It's unavoidable. These crashes are not unforeseen or unavoidable. They are the predictable consequence of somebody making a choice to get behind the wheel of a car and drive after drinking or taking an impairing substance. These are preventable. When you see a community grieve the way the Brownsville community has grieved, you understand that these crashes have a huge ripple effect.
The story I want people to know is how devastating drunk driving can be. I mean, it doesn't just harm the people that were killed in the accident or whatever. It harms everybody. It harms their family, their community. It harms everybody. It's just such a devastating thing, and it's preventable.
So what I've kind of started telling people is the sound that third beer makes when you open it, that's the sound of you admitting that you can't drive anymore. We all probably have apps on our phone that could have a car here. Even as remote as we are, there could be a car here in probably a half hour.
He made a bad decision, and it cost lives. Not only their lives, but his life as well. I mean, if you really think about it, 3 lives are ruined out of this. Not to mention countless people involved. Lives are never going to be the same. Just call a cab, call a friend, get an Uber, spend the night. Make good choices.
Every one of us can have a role in preventing these terrible crashes from happening. If you're with somebody and you know that they're impaired, take their keys. They might be mad at you. They may never talk to you again, but the next day, they're going to be alive, and so will the other people who were on the road that night with them.
You are going to change the world with this decision, because that's what it is. It's a decision.